How are you guys doing? Today is Friday, May 6th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on Jose Altuve. The elite Venezuelan second baseman for the Houston Astros turns 32, and my intention with this episode is, of course, to give an in-depth look at what Jose Altuve has done, look at how his impact has been able to impact the game of baseball on a micro level, game in and game out, season in, season out with his teammates, and then look at how he's been able to impact the league on a macro level. He is a 5'6" player, if you're not familiar with him, but he does have a lot of boom in his swings. He is one of the best contact hitters that I've ever seen. I just think that he's one of those players that can just see the spin of the ball, can see the pitch of the ball a lot faster than a lot of other people can. And at the same time, he is one of the most consistent forces in all of baseball, considering there are hundreds of thousands of players around the world competing for his position. I think that Jose Altuve I think it'd be an understatement to say that he's an elite baseball player that has really shown his mark. He stood out from the rest, and he's virtually won everything that you've wanted, that you really kind of need to see him win. He's already won a regular season MVP. He's won a batting title. He's been named an all-star multiple times. He's been named a World Series champion. He's been an ALCS MVP. He's even won a Golden Glove alongside 5 straight Silver Sluggers. And at this point, he's still in his early 30s, and I do think that he has a lot more years ahead of him. So I digress. Getting into his story, originally coming out of Maracay, Venezuela, he would go on to try out for the Houston Astros as a 16-year-old. And of course, knowing international rules, once he was 16, he would go on to get picked up by the Astros youth organization. He would go on to make his debut for the Houston Astros in his age 21 season in 2011. And just even looking at how his career has been from the beginning, he has been playing with the Houston Astros ever since he made his debut. And taking a look at how his career would how it would launch off with the Houston Astros. In his very first season, the Houston Astros were actually in the National League, to give a sense of how long he's been on the team. His first season would see him play 57 games in a season where the Astros finished with a 56 and a 106 record. They finished with the worst record in the National League Central, as this was probably one of the worst seasons that the Astros had. They had not won this few games in their history since 1981, and that was the season when everything was all broken up, when there was literally half a season. Just to get a sense of the team that he was really kind of walking into. In that very first season playing with Houston, he would finish with 61 hits in the 57 games that he played. He had 26 runs on the year, as he had 10 doubles, a triple, 2 home runs, and 12 RBIs in that full 57 game stretch. He would finish with a 276 batting average, which even to this day is one of the lowest that he would put together in a full-ish season. He would finish with a 654 OPS, as his on-base percentage was below 300 and his slugging percentage was below 400. But following that year, of course, he would really after that year, he would become a full-time starter with the team, as, of course, a lot of players have their rough patches to get started. And after the Astros did not make the playoffs, this would transition into the Astros' last season as a member of the National League, which was 2012. And in his age 22 season, Jose Altuve would play 147 games in a season where the Astros finished with a 55 and a 107 record. They had one less win than the previous year, of course, setting another standard for that's probably the least amount of wins they put together in a full season up until that point. This is the season where Justin Maxwell won the Defensive Player of the Year. In that 2012 season, Jose Altuve would be a National League All-Star for the only time in his career. He would have 167 hits in the 147 games he played in his first full season. That's 20 more hits than games played. He had 80 runs on the season. That would be the first time he would score 80. He would have 34 doubles on the year, the first time he would eclipse the 30-double mark. He had 4 triples. He had 7 home runs alongside 37 RBIs, as it would take a second for him to cross that double-digit home run threshold. He would finish with 33 stolen bases after having 7 the year before, so this would be the first year he would steal over 30 bases. And this was all while he had 167 hits and 30 RBIs. He would finish with a 290 batting average, and with his OBP and slugging percentage combined at 740, we would see Jose Altuve, of course, showing himself as one of the few bright rising stars on this Astros team that hadn't even won 60 games for the year. Following his first All-Star season, Jose Altuve would go on to see the Astros first move on to the American League, and in his first season in the American League, which was his second full season in the MLB, in his age 23 season, he would go on to play 152 games for an Astros team that would end up going 51-111. This is the worst record I believe the Astros have ever had in their franchise's history. This is the first season that they were in the AL West, of course. This is the year where Matt Dominguez was the Defensive Player of the Year. After Jose Altuve's first All-Star appearance, he would finish with 177 hits in the 152 games he played. That would, of course, be a career high at that point. That was 10 more than the year before. He had 64 runs on the year, 16 less than the year prior. He would have 31 doubles, making it the second year in a row he had at least 30 doubles. Alongside his 2 triples, he had 5 home runs and 52 RBIs. It would be the first time he crossed 50 RBIs. He had 35 stolen bases on the year, making it the second consecutive year he had at least 30 stolen bases. He would get caught stealing more than any player in the American leagues. This would be the second year in a row he got caught stealing a double-digit amount of times, and at 13, that is his career high. He would go on to finish with a 283 batting average and a 678 OPS. His OPS is about 60-70 points lower than it was his first All-Star season. And once the season did come to an end, the Astros missed the playoffs. Jose Altuve would not get named to an All-Star team, but he would be considered a consistent hitting force on this team. And I would imagine the only reason he didn't make an All-Star game that year was because the Astros were so terrible. His third full season with the Astros and his second season in the American League would see him become an all-star for the very first time in the American League as a 24-year-old in the 2014 season. In that season, Jose Altuve would play 158 games for an Astros team that went 70-92. They won 19 games compared to the prior year. This was the year in which Dallas Keuchel would win his first Gold Glove with the team. Jose Altuve would go on to finish with 225 hits in those 158 games. This would be the fourth year in a row he had more hits than games played, and definitely his third full season of having over 162 hits in a 162 game season. This would be the first time he crossed the 200 hit threshold. His 225 hits led the American League and is the most amount of hits that Jose Altuve has put together in a season. He would go on to finish with 67 more hits than games played in that season. That might be his biggest deficit in his career. He had 85 runs, which would be a career high for him at that point. He would finish with 47 doubles. This would be the first time he crossed the 40 double threshold. This would be the third year in a row he had at least 30. He would finish with 7 home runs alongside 59 RBIs. Second year in a row, he's had at least 50 RBIs. He would lead the American League in stolen bases, as this was the only time in his career he would finish with at least 40, as he had 56 stolen bases. This would be the third year in his career that he's had at least 30 stolen bases. He would go on to lead the American League in batting average at 341. This would be the first time his batting average was above 300, and the fourth year in a row, it was above 270. And with his on-base percentage at 377 and his slugging at 453, his 830 OPS would be his highest OPS, at least at that time. In addition to being named an All-Star for the second time in a row and for the first time in the American League, he was given his first ever Silver Slugger Award, and he would be 13th overall in an MVP vote that would see Mike Trout win it all. But this is the year people first got a taste of how individually dynamic Jose Altuve is. Having 200 hits in one season is ridiculous. And even though the Astros did not make the playoffs, the league was well aware of who Jose Altuve was. Following his first American League All-Star season and his second All-Star season. He would come back to Houston for his fifth season with the team. In his age 25 season in 2015, he would play 154 games in a season where the Astros finished with an 86-76 record. They had 16 more wins than the prior year as they were runners-up in the American League West. This would be the first time they made the playoffs as well. This is the year where Dallas Keuchel was given the Cy Young Award and a Gold Glove, and also the year in which Carlos Correa would win the Rookie of the Year, for context. In this season, Jose Altuve would go on to be named an All-Star for the second year in a row and for the third time in a 4-year stretch. He had 200 hits in 154 games, making it the second year in a row he had at least 200 hits. In the fourth game, he's had at least 162. He would go on to lead the American League in at-bats this year as well. This is the only season he's led the league in that category. He would set a career high for himself in runs with 86, as he had one more run than the previous year. He would finish with 40 doubles, making it the fourth year in a row he's had at least 30, and the second year that he's had at least the second year in a row that he's had at least 40. He would finish with 4 triples, tied with his first full season for his career high at that point. He would finish with a career high at that point with 15 home runs, the first time he's had double-digit home runs, and he would have 66 RBIs, the first time he'd have at least 60 RBIs in a season. He would lead the American League in stolen bases for the second time in his career, as he had 38 of them. This would be the fourth year in a row that he's had at least 30, and he has not led the league and he has not led the American League in stolen bases since 2015. He was also the leader in the league in times caught stealing, as he was caught stealing 13 times, which is also a career high for him. He finished with a .313 batting average. The second year in a row he's had at least a .300 batting average. His OPS was .812, just about 18 points below what it was just the year before. And once this season came to an end, the Astros would go on to make the playoffs. And as they made the playoffs, Altuve, like I said, was named an All-Star for the third time in his career. He was given a Silver Slugger for the second year in a row, and he was given the Gold Glove for the only time in his career, as he was finished 10th in MVP voting. 2015 is the only season in which Jose Altuve was presented the Golden Glove and the Silver Slugger in the same year. As he would go on to make his first playoff berth with the Astros, they would go on to beat the Yankees in the wild card game before losing in 5 in the division series to the Kansas City Royals, who went on to win the World Series that year, as a matter of fact. This would transition into Jose Altuve's 6th year with the team, his age 26 season in 2016. He would go on to start 161 games for an Astros team that would go on to finish with an 84-78 record. They had 2 less wins than the year before, as this was the year where Dallas Keuchel won his 3rd Gold Glove in a year. Jose Altuve would go on to be named a Silver Slugger for the 3rd year in a row as well, as within the season he would be named an All-Star for the 4th time in a 5-year stretch. He finished with 216 hits in 161 games. His 216 hits is, of course, 55 more hits than games played. This will be the 3rd time in his career he's had at least 200. This will be the 6th year in a row, continually going on, that he's had more hits than games played. He would finish with 108 runs on the season. This would be the first time he had 100 runs and 200 hits. He would finish with 42 doubles, making it the 3rd year in a row he's had at least 40 doubles. He hasn't had 40 doubles in a season since 2016. He would finish with 5 doubles, which to this date is a career high. That is the only season in his career that he's had 5 triples. He would finish with 24 home runs, which was a career high for him at that point, and he finished with 96 RBIs. His 96 RBIs in 2016 are the most that he's ever put together in a season, as they were 30 more than the year before. He would go on to finish with 30 stolen bases, making it the 5th year in a row that he's had at least 30. That's half a decade of doing that, which is incredibly tough. He would lead the American League in times caught stealing for the 3rd time in a 4-year stretch, as he was caught stealing 10 times. This is the 4th time in a 10-year stretch he was caught stealing a double-digit amount of times. However, he would finish the season with the batting champ or he would finish with the batting title as he finished with a 338 batting average. This would be the second time in a 4-year stretch that he would go on to lead the league in batting average. And he would go on to finish with a 928 OPS, the first time his OPS was above 900. His on-base percentage was a career high at that point at 396, and his slugging percentage topped 500 for the first time in his career as it was 531. He would go on to touch 340 total bases, the first time he touched 300 bases in his career. At the end of the season, he was named an All-Star, of course. He was given the Silver Slugger for the third year in a row. He would finish third in MVP voting in a season that would see Mike Trout take home the trophy yet again. But after his fourth All-Star appearance and the Astros missing the playoffs, the next season would actually change everything for Jose Altuve. But of course, before then, he was a 3-time All-Star, a 3-time Silver Slugger, and not to mention a Gold Glove winner, as a matter of fact, and a top 3 MVP candidate. Going into 2017, this would probably be like the last of Jose Altuve's super wonder seasons that no one has ever really seen in a baseball player. In his 7th season in the league, in Jose Altuve's age 27 season, he would go on to play 153 games for a Houston Astros team that finished with 101 wins and 61 losses. They had 17 more wins than the year before. They will go on to win the American League West for the first time in their franchise's history. This is the first time that they've won their division since 2001. So this is, of course, a historic year in that sense as well. This was the year in which Jose Altuve would go on to be named the MVP of the American League. He had 204 hits in the 153 games he played. That is 51 more hits than games played. This will be the 7th year in a row he had more hits than games. This would be the 6th year in a row that he's had over 162 hits in a 162-game season. This would be the 4th year in a row that he's had at least 200 hits, which is a ridiculous feat. I don't think you see that many players. You don't even see players doing it now. He would go on to finish with 112 runs, which at that point was a career high, and it would be the 2nd year in a row that he had at least 100 runs, and the 5th year in a 6-year stretch that he had at least 80 runs in a season. He had 39 doubles on the year. That would make it the 6th year in a row that he's had at least 30 doubles in a year. He finished with 24 home runs, the 2nd year in a row that he's had at least 20 home runs and 81 RBIs, the 2nd time that he's hit at least 80 RBIs in a season. He would finish with 32 stolen bases. That would be the 6th year in a row that Jose Altuve would steal at least 30. He has not stolen at least 30 bases since 2016, and that's been about a 5-year stretch since. At the end of the year, he will go on to finish with the batting title as he had a 346 batting average, which is a career high for him. This would be the 4th year in a row that his batting average was above 300 for the year, which is incredible. And the 7th year in a row that it was over 270, which is really hard to do. He would go on to finish with a career high in on-base percentage at 410. That is the only time in his career that his on-base percentage was above 400. He would go on to finish with a 547 slugging percentage, which would go on to be his career high at the time in slugging. It'll be the 2nd time in his career that his slugging percentage went above 500. He would go on to touch 323 bases. That is the 2nd time in his career he would touch over 300 bases. He has not touched 300 bases since 2017. He would go on to be named an All-Star for the 5th time in a 6-year stretch. He would be given the Silver Slugger at the second base position for the 4th year in a row, which is a very tough feat to replicate your success in. He will go on to be named the MVP of the American League. That is the only time he's won the award. He would win it over 2nd place Aaron Judge after Aaron Judge had one of the greatest rookie seasons in American League history. But of course, following that, the Astros would win the American League West for the first time. Once they made it into the playoffs, they would go on to beat the Red Sox 3-1 in the American League Division Series. They beat the Yankees 4-3. They beat them in 7 in the American League Championship Series. And after trailing the Dodgers 3-2, they would go on to beat the Dodgers in the World Series. It later came out that the Astros eventually cheated, but they still were able to keep their immunity. They were able to keep their title, and Jose Altuve was a pretty big part of the Astros taking home that World Series title. As in that World Series championship, he would finish with about a 194 batting average, as he would have 6 hits for himself, as 2 of his hits ended up being home runs for 6 RBI. So he ended up being very impactful in that series, and he was able to take home the only title that he was able to win at that point in his career. But after that point, Jose Altuve was a champion, an MVP, a multiple-time Silver Slugger, a Gold Glove winner, a multiple-time batting champ, and a player that had just finished his fourth consecutive season of over 200 hits. So following this season, this would lead into Altuve's 8th year with the Houston Astros in his age 28 season in 2018. He would go on to play 137 games in a season where the Astros would finish with a 103-59 record. They had 2 more wins than the year they had prior. This would be the year in which Keuchel would go on to win yet another Gold Glove for this organization, and Jose Altuve would pick up yet another Silver Slugger. In the 2018 season, he would go on to finish with 169 hits in 137 games. That's 32 more hits than games played. That would be the 7th year in a row that he's had over 162 hits in a 162-game season. This would be the 7th year in a row that he had more hit, or the 8th year in a row he had more hits than games played. He had 84 runs on the year, making it the 5th year in a row he's had at least 80 runs in 6 of the last 7. He would go on to finish with 29 doubles. That would end his 6-year stretch or 7-year stretch of having at least 30 doubles. Alongside his 2 triples, he had 13 home runs and 61 RBIs. He would finish with a .316 batting average, as this would be the 5th year in a row that he's had at least a 300 batting average in a full season. To do that for half a decade is ridiculous. He would go on to finish with an .837 OPS, as this would be the 4th year in a row it was over 800 for a player that's not really a slugging, multiple bases type guy. He would go on to finish with 241 total bases on the season. As at the end of the year, he would be by the end of the year, he was named an All-Star for the 5th year in a row and for the 6th time in a 7-year stretch. He was given his 5th consecutive Silver Slugger. He has not been given a Silver Slugger at the second base position in the American League since 2018. However, once the Astros made the playoffs, they would go on to beat the then Cleveland Indians 3-0, and then they would go on to lose in the American League Championship Series to the Boston Red Sox in 5 games, as this was the year where the Red Sox would beat the LA Dodgers in the World Series. So following this would transition into Jose's 9th season with the Astros. And in his age 29 season in 2019, he would go on and play 124 games in a season where the Astros finished with a 107-55 record. This, I believe, is the best record that the Astros have ever put together in their franchise's history. This was the season in which Justin Verlander joined the team and won the Cy Young. Yordan Alvarez was given the Rookie of the Year, and George Springer and Alex Bregman would go on to win Silver Sluggers. Not to mention Zach Greinke was given the Gold Glove. Just to give you a sense of how amazingly stacked top to bottom this team was. Altuve would go on to miss a few games because of a hamstring strain, and it would be early in the season, so it would go on to end his streak of making the All-Star game at 5 years. In the 124 games he played, Altuve finished with 149 hits. That's 25 more hits than games played, continuing his streak at 9 years. He had 89 runs on the season. That would go on to make it a 6-year stretch of having at least 80 runs in 7 of the last 8. He would go on to finish with 27 doubles, 3 triples, 31 home runs along 74 RBIs. His 31 home runs are tied for his career high, but in 2019, that'll be the first time that he would eclipse 30 home runs. He would finish with a .298 batting average, which would end his streak of seasons of 300 at 5. But this would, of course, be his 9th consecutive season batting at least .270. And it would go on to, he was continually batting incredibly well. He would still go on to finish with a .903 OPS. This would be the 3rd time in a 4-year stretch that his OPS would be over 900. He has not done so since then, but it was because the slugging percentage was at .550. It would be a career high for him in slugging percentage, as he would go on to hit a career high in home runs. And following this season, even though he would go on to miss the All-Star game, he would still be a part of the Astros team that had a lot of momentum going into the playoffs. They would go all the way to the World Series after beating the Rays in 5 and then the Yankees in 6. as Jose Altuve was the ALCS MVP when they went on to beat the New York Yankees. Specifically within this playoff series itself, he would go on to have a 348 batting average as he had 8 hits in that series, 2 home runs. But once they made it to the World Series, they would end up losing to the Washington Nationals. They ended up losing that series in 7. So following that series, that would lead Jose Altuve right back to his 10th season with the Houston Astros. As many people remember, in 2020, it was the season in which the MLB had to shorten its season because of COVID. Every team had to play 60 games, but they did expand the playoffs. In his age 30 season with Houston, he would go on to play 48 games for a Houston Astros team that ended up going 29-31. They finished second in their division, so they were still able to make the playoffs. Altuve was able to finish with 42 hits in the 48 games. That would be the first season in his 10-year career that he would go on to finish with less hits than games played. He had 32 runs on the year alongside his 42 hits, which is crazy. He would go on to finish with 9 doubles, 5 home runs, and 18 RBIs. He had a 219 batting average, even though it wasn't necessarily a full season. He would go on to finish with a 629 OPS as his batting average and OPS hit their career lows. But still, the Astros were able to make it into the playoffs for what would be the 4th year in a row and for the 5th time in a 6-year stretch. In that 2020 playoff stretch, they would end up beating the Twins 2-0 in the wild card round. They would end up beating the Athletics 3-1 in the divisional round before losing in 7 to the AL regular season champs Tampa Bay Rays. After the Rays beat the Astros, the Rays would end up losing to the Dodgers in the World Series. That would transition into Altuve's most recent full season, his 11th season with the Astros. In his age 31 season, he would play 146 games for an Astros team that went 95-67 and won the AL West. They had won 12 less games than their last full season, which was 2 years ago. Within this last season, this would be the year in which Yuli Gurriel and Carlos Correa both won Gold Gloves, as Carlos Correa won the Platinum Glove for the year. In 2021, Jose Altuve would return to the All-Star team to make his 7th game after a 2-year drought, one of them being an injury season, the other one being the shortened season. In his age 31 season, Altuve would finish with 167 hits in the 146 games he played. That is 21 more hits than games played, as that's the 10th time he's done it in his 11-year stretch. He had 117 runs at the end of the year, which is his career high to this date. This will be the 3rd time he's crossed the 100 runs threshold, not to mention the 8th time he's crossed 80 runs, or at least 80 runs in this 160-game season. He would go on to finish with 32 doubles on the year, first time since 27 that he's had at least 30 of them. This would go on to be the 8th time in his career that Jose Altuve, or the 7th time in his career that Altuve has finished with at least 30 doubles in a year. He would finish with 31 home runs and 83 RBIs, tied for his career high in home runs, his second highest RBIs in a season. He would go on to finish with a 278 batting average, which is a little lower than what many would expect of him, but that's still incredibly high for an MLB player. He would still go on to finish with an 839 OPS, which is pretty much on par with what he was doing. This would be the 7th full season in which his OPS was above 800. After being named an All-Star, he would go on to help the Houston Astros make it right back to the playoffs. They would beat the Chicago White Sox in the first round 3-1. They would beat the Boston Red Sox in the AL Championship Series 4-2. They would go on to the World Series where they would lose to the Atlanta Braves in 6. This would be Altuve's 3rd title appearance, as the only time that he had won a championship was the first year that they made it, which they cheated. But still, it would lead to where we are right now, as Jose Altuve is still in the midst of his 12th season with the Houston Astros. He has currently played only 12 games in a season in which the Astros are currently fighting for the best record in the American League West, but right now they're sitting a game and a half behind the division-leading LA Angels at the moment. So far, Altuve has only played about half of the games so far. as even in this season, Jose Altuve has managed to finish he has 8 hits in the 12 games he's played. He has 5 runs, 2 home runs, and 4 RBIs. He has an 182 batting average and a 626 OPS. Obviously, those numbers aren't representative for what Jose Altuve can do in a season, but I do think that the other seasons do paint a picture that Jose Altuve is one of the few models of incredible consistency in this league. He does more than simply hit. He is a player that he's a player that's had 200 hits in 4 consecutive seasons, and in one of those seasons, he was be named a Golden Glove. I do think that when it's all said and done, Jose Altuve will be a Hall of Famer, but I do think that it will be a very, very long time until we get there. And until then, I do want to thank everyone for listening to this piece. I really do hope all is well. And if you ever get a chance to watch Jose Altuve, I would. He's currently wearing number 27 for the Houston Astros. And with that said, I want to thank the Pro Baseball Reference website, the MLB, the ESPN websites, because without them, I would not be able to do this. And of course, I want to thank everyone once again for listening to everything that I have for today, for May 6th. And once everything is done, I'm going to come back tomorrow on May 7th for another episode of The Elite. So until then, I want to thank you for listening to this piece. I hope all is well. And I actually have 2 more individual profiles right after this. Thanks for listening. I hope all is well. And peace out. I'll catch you tomorrow.